How do you prioritize self-care in your life, and what does that look like for you?
So I've had to become very intentional in this process of self-care.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It's no secret. I'm in my 50s, and I've come through a season of my life as a mother of three and now a grandmother of three that I didn't always engage in the best intentional practice of self-care. And so through this position, it has become even more important for me to set aside time every day and be intentional about that. And for me, in my mind, I divide that into 4 areas, body, mind, spirit, and nourish. And so I try to do something every day associated with one of those areas. And I find that when I am intentional about that, I bring my best self to the table, to my team, to the communities I serve.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on something really important. And I think we as women in this culture can get caught up in we got to show up for everybody, doing all the things all the time for our jobs, for our kids, for our partners, for the community. And what we forget in the process is that if we're not filling ourselves up and making sure that we're refreshed, no one's getting their best version. We're not getting our best version of ourselves. And neither are all of those other areas that we're trying to give to. So I think it's I'm so glad that we're starting to have more conversations about it. And you live in a health sciences medical world too. And it seems like some of the busiest, most demanding career paths I know are in that world. And you have this weird collision with, I'm providing health and wellness to the whole area, to the world in your case, because of the high level just rank of TTUHSC and how far reaching it is. But I've also got it, that applies to me too. That's not just something that I, carry to other people.
Absolutely. And as the face of our university at times in the 6 communities where we have campuses, I realize how important it is that I walk the walk and that we're sharing with everyone. And so trying to be very intentional about talking about health and what does health look like from not just a body perspective, but our mind as well. And particularly through COVID, we became very focused on making sure that not only were we taking care of our communities, but we were taking care of each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So important in this time. And I think a good reset for all of us as we took a look at that and how we were doing things, how we've had to adjust. Confidently setting boundaries. Again, so many demands on your time. I would say just working with your team the last couple of months, they do a really good job. There's a system for you that, there's a 5-point system that you go through before it's decided whether this is something you're going to give your time to, which I think is brilliant. So congratulations to you and your team for just automatically setting up that boundary for you professionally. But what does that look like for you with all that's going on when you leave the office, when you go home or whatever? How do you set up those boundaries so you've got that space to just kind of clear your mind and be fresh every day?
It's something that we have to work at very hard as a team to ensure that the calendar is manageable. The joke around our offices, our team does such an incredible job of building a calendar that makes sure that we're addressing all the important things that we need to do as a university, what we need to delegate. Because Melissa, we have an incredible team here at the Health Sciences Center. And so one of the things that I learned very quickly as a leader of a large, complex organization is to build a team. Build a team of people who are smarter than you are, who have great expertise in areas, and build trust with those individuals, and then let them do what they do best. And so really prioritizing the day and what that looks like, and then what needs my attention that day to ensure that we are executing the vision of the university, to make sure that we're staying within the boundaries of our mission and what we want to accomplish. So professionally, I'm very fortunate to have this wonderful team around me. To be honest with you, personally is where it becomes more challenging, because finding the balance, in a very demanding life. And I'm very fortunate to my husband, my life partner for 38 years. We've known each other for very long and have survived and thrived through the different seasons of our life. And there are different seasons in long-term marriages of and reevaluating and adjusting, and to make sure that you are thriving in those relationships and the give and take that's required of that. And my husband is very understanding that we are at a season of our life right now where he really has to support me in certain areas where maybe things that I have done in the past, he is now taking on and handling for us so that, I can be responsible for what it is this position requires.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's just such a great example of the give and take that goes on as you go through different seasons. I mean, I think, and especially with, when you're raising kids and going through that, there's that back and forth. I mean, even for Brady and I, our 3 girls are in their 20s now. They're mostly gone. We're in the mostly, they come and go some, but we've changed dramatically. I mean, Brady does all the cooking now. He does all the grocery shopping because A, I've never loved those things. And B, that's just what fits in the season now. He's not running around coaching the girls anymore like he was, 10, 15 years ago. I've got a job that's more demanding of my time than it was when they're growing up. So just that give and take. And I think that's such an important conversation to be able to have in our relationships and that space of safety and trust that, I'm in a season now, where I can support you. So let's make a shift on that. I love that. I think that, and that's how relationships survive and thrive, where you don't
agree.
Get, and it's so necessary. So thank you for sharing that. And good job, Doug. That's awesome.
Oh, I know. Yay, Doug.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. What does that look like for you?
So as I mentioned earlier, one of the 4 tenets that I follow every day are mind, body, spirit, and nourish. Yeah. And so for my spirit, I have devotional time every day where I make sure that I'm aligned. I'm making sure that I'm committing myself to my best and highest purpose that day for what it is that I need to accomplish, and just really spending some quiet time in that space. Yeah. And for my mind, I think it's very important that I dedicate to becoming a student of leadership, much like I dedicated myself to my scientific career when I was coming up through the ranks of the university. It requires that type of learning, that type of practice, that type of understanding people and what motivates them and why they feel the way they feel, and building relationships and my responsibility and role around that. So that's kind of the spirit and the mind piece of it.
Right.
For my body, I have made a commitment no matter what the schedule is that day. And some days, because of travel and being at the airport and not getting back until late in the evening, it's not unusual for us to have 15 and 16-hour days.
Sure.
I have committed to 20 minutes of movement, whether it be walking, whether it be riding my bike, whether it be yoga. And that is non-negotiable. That has become non-negotiable for me. And, my team sometimes joins me in that. If we're somewhere, I was in Amarillo and had a little bit of time between a couple of meetings last week, and my vice president for external affairs, you may know her, Ashley.
I do,
she joined me. Yeah, Ashley joined me, and we met and walked. That's at the same time. So my team also understands my commitment to that 20 minutes a day, and then also the nourishment piece. I'm at an age in my life where I have to become very intentional about what I eat, how I hydrate myself. The team is very supportive and making sure that there's always a healthy choice there for me. And so that gives me a lot of peace, knowing that I am being intentional about those 4 things every day. It sets the tone for the day. And I had to let go of that perfectionism. I think a lot of us women through our 20s and 30s, we're rewarded for that. Because we are. And the more our success has been built on our ability that people could count on us to always dot the I's and cross the T's and making sure things get done. And sometimes that was done at the expense of our own health and well-being.
Absolutely.
And so getting away from that perfectionism and realizing that some days we're going to pull it off, and some days it may be a little messy, and what are we going to learn from it and move on to the next day?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important. I'm in my 50s as well, and I learned some hard lessons along the way about what I was sacrificing, and it made me really kind of recalibrate. I'm like, okay, I loved how you mentioned the non-negotiables. 20 minutes a day is nothing to give up. And it is remarkable the difference that makes. when you just get out
Absolutely.
and move your body, and because you're dealing in situations where there can be a lot of emotions. You're talking about people's health. You're bringing different groups together and having conversations where you're the leader. You have to remain calm and focused and poised. And sometimes you just need to get out and release all of that energy, I think, that can sometimes come from those scenarios. And I think that you setting that table and your staff knowing it's a priority is just a great example of you walking the walk. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Oh, I love this one. You're going to be a star at this one. You've been great at all these, but how can we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically? And before you answer, I want to, set the table that President Dr. Lori Rice-Spearman is the first female university president ever in the Texas Tech University system of any university. You're the 9th president of TTUHSC. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So she's walking the walk in this, and how she has lived her life, worked hard in her career, and earned this immense opportunity to have this platform, but also be in a space where there hasn't been a woman in the seat before. I was trying to think of the great way to say that. There just hasn't been a woman in the seat. So you get to be the first time. That can be a great thing. There can be a lot of pressure with that. So it's a great opportunity, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. So how do you navigate that in living yourself unapologetically, and also helping other women along the way? Because you've set a tone here, I think, and made people around this space know this is possible. This can be done. So 1, congratulations and thank you. And for the way you've gone about that. And 2, talk about that.
So first, I want to acknowledge the commitment that it took from our chancellor, Ted Mitchell, to realize that diversity is important, particularly diversity around a leadership table. And I'm grateful that recognition is there, that as many diverse opinions and thoughts and approaches to solving complex problems, diverse voices need to be heard. Right. That is so important. And so he's been a wonderful mentor to me, and I just want to acknowledge the value of that and how important that is, and how I, in turn, as I am building leadership teams across all 6 of our campuses, being very intentional myself of making sure that we are building diverse teams, because therein lies our ability to solve difficult problems, making sure that all the voices are around the table and are being heard, and that we are having different styles of solution-focused individuals around the table. I believe that's the strength of our Health Sciences Center, and we are very intentional about that approach. So I just want to acknowledge that, as the first female president, and the value that brings to leadership and making decisions around leadership. I have been at many leadership tables and continue to be in some arenas where I am the only female at the table. And clearly, I bring a very type of leadership approach than some of my other counterparts. So I have had to make peace with that. I have to not let that. I will tell you, I went through a period in my life where, because I was the only female so often at the leadership table, where I almost would come into a room and take a deep breath and say, okay, here we go again. I'm the only one. And kind of carrying that mantra of, I have to represent the female perspective, and I'm the only female. Honestly, Melissa, I had to let go of that and just come into the table as a leader. And here's my best self as a leader coming to the table. My responsibilities around that, I have to make sure that I'm mentoring young women, and quite frankly, I need to make sure that young men value the diverse perspective, but that also I'm mentoring young women to understand that some of those ingrained thoughts that we have about speaking up, and we have to know everything about every topic before we can weigh in on something. We have to let go of some of that in mentoring those young women. Women tend to be, and this is evidence-based research, they tend to not take risk at the same level. And so what are the values of taking risk and being risk-oriented and being okay with failure? and moving on. What am I going to learn from this failure? Fall forward, move on, and put tools in your toolbox that make you stronger. And so that's kind of my perspective from being the first female president, and around how important it is that I'm building leaders for the next generation.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that perspective, because I think sometimes you spoke to this as a woman, especially the first woman in the room. We take on this huge responsibility that we are representing and speaking. And instead of just go in there and be yourself, yourself, right, and your hard work and your intention have gotten you to this opportunity. Don't waver from that. Continue to be yourself and do it with the same track and fearlessness that got you there, and taking those risks. Because you don't get into positions like this, period, male or female, without taking some risk along the way and continuing that. So I love that you spoke to that, because I think that's so important. And the perfectionism piece, and just owning, I'm going to show up every day and be my best self and do the best I can. And that's going to be what it's going to be, and really getting comfortable with that. Because I think when you're comfortable with that, it gives permission for others to be comfortable with that too. Because I think they sense that about us, and it kind of puts that all at ease. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And also the piece too about mentoring young men, so that young men can see, as they're coming up, the value of a different voice, a diverse voice, a female voice, and all those things, and the importance of it. And it's not an anomaly anymore. It's not an exception. It's just part of how we do things, and how we reward people who've put in the work and are capable. Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned earlier you have 3 kids that you and Doug have raised. And as you've been on this track, talk about the importance of coming back to your values / your why and everything you do, and how you decide what's the best track for you and how to approach that.
So I was raised in West Texas, and in Odessa, Texas. And my why actually came through my experience as a child and a young adult, experiences I had with family members trying to access healthcare. And I knew that this was always a passion for me. I'm a very curious person. I always want to know why. And my mom uses the word precocious. So I just was always needing to understand why. And that curious piece of me then became to question, why is it so hard for us to get access to healthcare? Why? So as my career developed, and my curiosity in science began to evolve as I was having these life experiences and practicing within my field of clinical laboratory science, I began to see the challenges that individuals were having with access to healthcare. Yeah. And it really became a passion. And so I really came to the place of my purpose, the reason I believe with every fiber of my being is to see if I can improve access to healthcare for all Texans. And so what is the platform where I need to be put so that I can continue to be interacting with government relations and policy development and development within our communities, the community leaders, to make sure that we are putting infrastructure into place that increases access to care. Right. And that really became my driving force through my more mature years as a professor, into a dean's position, into an assistant provost position, and then into the president's position. And so everything that I do as a president of this university is along the vision of, will this increase access to healthcare? We have an incredible team of clinicians, but we all, I think, acknowledge that there are certain aspects of access to healthcare that are broken. Yeah. And so what are we going to do? Because we can't, what's that Einstein saying? If you continue to do the thing you've always done, and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So we're going to have to start thinking beyond the box, how we're going to solve our problems, particularly out here in West Texas. So we really started pushing the faculty and our students and our staff to say, okay, we know through COVID that one of the ways that we solved this was through collaborating in ways we had never collaborated in all of our communities with each other, with partners that we had never had. And out of that collaboration came these incredible innovations. And so one of my mantras that we picked up on was collaboration is the cradle of innovation. And that is truly how we are going to transform healthcare. And
yeah, I love that.
And not being afraid of these collaborations. And sure, we've never done it before, but now we've got to figure out how to do it to move the needle in healthcare transformation. The team has just done a tremendous job of getting behind this vision and are being very creative of who they come to the table and who we're coming to the table with. And some of them are very exciting. And that has become about what drives me and the passion around that and staying true to myself and my purpose and why I'm here and serving that purpose. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. And I love how that you identified that as a young person, like there's a problem here. And then you went into the sciences, which I will say for our generation in the 50s was still kind of unusual for a woman to approach. Absolutely. So I love you kind of your fearlessness, like, no, this is something I care about, and I'm going to take the path that I need to be a difference maker, to move the needle on this. So I love that. And I also love, and this just speaks to, I think, the team that you've created and the environment you've created and culture where people are excited and feel free to bring their ideas to the table, bring any and all great ideas so we can do this. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you don't need to hear great job for me, but great job on creating, because that's not always the case. I mean, that's not, we know that's not always the case in work cultures, but to get the best, you said something earlier about surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. That's the best thing a great leader can do, is just like, I don't have to know everything. I can't know everything, but I can surround myself with people that do know those things I don't know. And we can do this together and we can make a difference, because that is how collaboration, innovation, that quote you put, that is perfect. That's how we move the needle in our healthcare issues in this country. And I think just across the culture, period, we could apply that. And so thank you for sharing that. I love that wisdom. That was wonderful.
And Melissa, I feel like I need to also make sure, collaboration and innovation is not all rainbows and sunshine. It is. I tell my team every day, we are giving ourselves permission to be messy. And messy means that we're going to acknowledge that we're going to make some mistakes. Yeah. But the messiness and solving the problems through the messiness is what's going to get us to the point of innovation. Yeah. And so just acknowledging we're going to have some missteps. What are we going to learn from it? We all know this is going to be messy. And so it's been fun for me as a leader to hear that mirrored back to me of, okay, we're trying to tackle this, and boy, is it messy. So they're acknowledging the messiness of it and what it's going to take for us to really lean into this and make it happen.
Yeah, I love that. And because I think sometimes in these things, it can require some bridge building and trust building when you're approaching collaborations and connections that haven't happened before. Because unfortunately, in our health sciences and medical world, especially with our populations that don't have access, they don't have the connections or the finances or the cultural background to have the access. There's some fear there and some concerns. And so, just not being afraid to like, okay, we're going to have to build some bridges and trust. So thank you for speaking to the messiness of that, because I think it's very important that when you're moving the needle on these things, people understand it takes time and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of fresh ideas. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's that persistence and just owning, we're gonna have some bumps along the way, but that's okay. That's how we make things better. So thank you for speaking to that. And this is probably a really hard one too, because of the position you're in, is living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations.
Yeah, I can be pretty hard on myself.
I bet you can.
I'll acknowledge that. Really just trying to move away from, so I journal. I try to journal as much as I can. And sometimes it's just a few words and sometimes it's a little more involved. But I try to end every day with a time of reflection. What could I have done better? What am I going to do better tomorrow? As I look back over the history of my leadership career, almost exclusively, it's so, as human beings, it's very interesting. Almost exclusively, every time consistently, it's about communication. Could I have reached out better? Could I have had better communication around this? How do I communicate better? And it's just something as human beings that we are daily challenged with about how to better communicate, and the illusion that communication has occurred, and just being very cognizant. Yes, and being very cognizant of, this is what I thought I said, but acknowledging this is what was heard. And it's just our humanness, as I call it.
Yeah.
As every conversation we come to, we bring our baggage, so to speak, and that filters how we hear something. And I'm included in that.
Yeah.
And then also how we communicate it out. And so it's something that I personally try to work on within my own family and within my team. We have a great team, and every member of the team brings their perspective in the communication realm. And I think that's just part of maturing as a leader and as an individual, to really understand how folks are hearing things and how we're communicating it.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting thing. And we started a pattern in our family a few years ago. This is just family communication, not even including work. And some of it's been transferred to our workspaces, is especially when we know a conversation is rushed or tense or a lot of emotion involved, we'll have the person repeat back to us, okay, this is what I think I said, but is it actually what I said? Or circling back around. And my oldest daughter and son-in-law have a great saying where they're like, uncommunicated expectations are just your hopes. And they can't actually be called expectations because you haven't communicated them to anybody. They're just your hopes. Right. And it's like, oh, that's a really good point from the wisdom of the 20-somethings. Communication piece, huge, huge, huge. But I like the journaling piece. I like that reflection at the end of the day, because I think that allows us space to just process and move through. And maybe stop the stories in our head that we're telling ourselves that are too hard or too critical or just not true, and just kind of be able to parse that out. I think that's just a great practice, especially with all that you've got going on. It's like, so you can kind of rest, so you can kind of release and be like a goldfish, like, we hear on Apple TV regularly from our good friend Ted, and just release that and be able to sleep at night. Because I think that otherwise you just hang on to that stuff, I think. So it's such a great practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And rerun and rework emails and conversations in your head. And
yes. Yeah. And you just keep spinning.
Yeah. You just brought up two phrases that I really have come to use a lot in what I call my adult life. And that is, what I hear you saying is, so that I can get that feedback from an individual. The other one was around the whole idea of getting them to tell me what you need. Let me understand what it is that you need.
Yeah.
As far as communication goes. And the family dynamics are interesting.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. They are. And I'm sure, we have 3 daughters that have 3 very different personalities. They're starting to bring partners into the mix. And so that just increases that dynamic, and how I communicate with them is different. And that took me a while to figure out. I'm like, this is the way it is. This is the way we do it. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no. That's not going to land with this one as well as it's going to land with this one. And kind of through some hard knocks, but that's also helped me in my work, because I work in an environment that we have a lot of 20-somethings. At the volunteer center, we tend to bring in people fresh and train them, and they get to learn, and it's wonderful. But it's also helped me in my understanding and communication with them. It's like, just because I know and assume something's going to be done a certain way, that doesn't mean they do. And so am I being clear? And do they understand it? Am I doing it in a way that they can receive it? And just the idea that not everybody receives communication in the same way, and being able to kind of adjust. And I'm sure you run into that all the time, depending on the room.
Absolutely. And my role, I have to watch out that my role as a mother doesn't also kind of wash into my role as a leader, because what you just mentioned, I think one of the things that has made me successful as a leader is I'm good at building a team and making a plan and making sure the I's are crossed and the T's are dotted, or other way around. T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And that's not necessarily the best approach when you're mothering.
Right.
So sometimes you need to hear from your kids, I just need for you to listen. I don't need a plan. Mom, you don't, I don't need a plan from you. But my knee jerk response is to go, okay, let's build a plan. We'll do da 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 da. And it's just like, no, Mom, you just listen on this one. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yes, that's so true. I heard this, my oldest daughter, when she was probably about 21, 22 years old, she's like, I don't need you to fix this. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I'm like, okay.
But we're fixers.
Exactly. By nature, I think. So it's such a good reminder of like, all right, step back. But yeah, thank you for speaking to that. Cause I've had those conversations too. And it is hard to not transfer those over back and forth. I think it's just kind of innate in us to do that. So kind of catching yourself. So yeah, I know what that is. I know what that means. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. And, we go through time, we do things that are great, we make mistakes, we everywhere in between. So talk about accepting all those layers of yourself who make you who you are today. Because I think, especially in this time that we're in with social media and those Instagram moments and those quick shots of things, we don't, we assume a lot of things about a full story we're not actually seeing. And we can get really hard on ourselves. And especially when you're in the limelight, there's a lot of eyes on you. So, kind of being able to accept all those layered aspects of yourselves and what that looks like for you.
Yes, I've had to make peace with the aging aspect. Here's my best self that I'm going to try to bring forward every day. And also being okay that I'm recognized now more publicly. And that was, I call myself an adapted introvert. And so realizing that, the role that I play in the public and wanting to be authentic of who I am. And so if individuals or in the communities we serve see me out on the weekends, I'm not going to change who I am and what I am on the weekends. I'm a mother and a grandmother and a wife and a sister and a daughter. And you're probably going to see me in workout clothes and tennis shoes and may or may not have makeup on. And to me, that's acknowledging and accepting the layers. I think for the most part, people want to see a real human being and recognizing that, I saw her on the news or a picture of her, but this is who she is. She's got her grandson with her, and they're headed to the park or to ride bikes or to interact and do a certain thing, and just being okay with being my authentic self. And getting away from, I think as leaders, we have to get away from the fact that, okay, we have to have a public persona and then we package that away. And then there's the real, quote unquote, the real us. And I decided that wasn't me serving my role in the best way. When you see Lori Rice-Spearman out and about, what you see is what you get. This is the real me. And for me to be the best leader I can be, that's the person that I'm going to bring to life every day.
I love that. And your authenticity comes through. And I think that allows you to do the things that you've done and building the teams that you have. In Living Out Feel, the name of our podcast, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers, how does that affect the quality of your relationships? And you talked on this earlier. I would think you talked about your different, being a mom, a grandmother, a wife, a daughter, a sister. I'm thinking your grandson is probably not too concerned with how well you performed in a meeting the day before. He's just happy to have you there with him spending time. Does that bring good kind of brevity and clarity and kind of a levelness and stability to all that you have going on?
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate. My family is very grounding. Gosh, they have no problems keeping me grounded in what's important and what's not important. I'm very fortunate. I was raised in a way where I'm not particularly ego-centered.
Sure.
So ego doesn't tend to drive me. So I'm very fortunate in that. But boy, if I were to even think about letting that kind of ooze into whatever it was I'm doing, my family does a very good job of keeping me grounded.
I love that.
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate. Yeah. I'm very fortunate with that. I like being creative. And so that's something that I enjoy doing particularly with my grandchildren. Sure. So anytime I'm with them, I always try to set aside creative time we're going to do something creative together, because they bring such innocence and such creativity to something. And it's just great to see that. So that's something that grounds me,
Absolutely.
being creative and having that to always turn to.
Sure. Doug has recently retired. You talked about
Yes,
a little bit earlier. How is that? How, as you've transitioned, it looks like you've made some great adjustment. How has that been for you all as you've kind of, I don't know, roles have changed, a little bit in your family?
So going back to that conversation about seasons of life, Doug has always been a very active father. One of the things that attracted me to him back in the 1980s when we first met was I almost knew instantly that he was going to be an exceptional father, and that has proven to be true. And then he's just knocking it out of the park on being a grandfather. He's a wonderful papa. Our grandkids just love him. He has almost come through a season of life where he's a kid again.
Oh, and, wow.
He's their biggest playmate when they're together, and sometimes much to the chagrin of our children, who have to remind us, Papa, there are rules and boundaries. But
grandpas don't want to be part of that.
Right. And so watching him kind of navigate the seasons of his life and how that impacts our relationship. But he knew, particularly coming through COVID and as we were moving out of COVID, that I was in need of a different level of support for us to be able to do what we were going to need to do. During COVID, we weren't traveling a lot. We were traveling some, but not a lot. And when the doors were thrown open and we realized, okay, for me to be able to do this job the way that I need to do it to serve the institution, that I was going to have a fairly high level of support with the family. Sure. And so we had some great conversations, and he said, I think I'm ready. And so he made the announcement that he was retiring. And that was a hard decision for him, because if you're familiar with High Point Village, it's just an incredible community.
What an environment. Yeah. It is such an incredible environment. And that staff, it's one of our volunteers' favorite places to go. I mean, they love going to High Point Village and spending time with the villagers. Oh my gosh.
Yes. I used to tease him and say, you realize that most people don't go to work every day and they're met at the door with this community of people who are saying, we love you, Mr. Doug. I love you, Doug, and hugging him and giving him high fives. And that's not normal for most executive directors. But he's back out there volunteering.
Oh, and good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah. And staying connected with that community. And, for him, retirement is transition, certainly, and finding his purpose, his daily purpose, and what he's going to do.
In his new season.
Yes. In his new season, and how we can support each other. And, if I had an opportunity to talk to individuals who are in their first 5 years of marriage or first 10 years of marriage, I would say, just give each other grace. Be kind to each other as you navigate. Everyone's going through seasons of life, and those can be challenges. And just try to do that for each other as you build this marriage, and know that there are days when you're going to think, "My gosh, you're the best person in my life," and there are days when you're thinking, okay, I'm not sure if I like you today. I still love you, but
yes. Yeah. And just being okay with that and knowing that's part of it. But being into and keeping those lines of communication open, and the grace piece. Oh my gosh, the grace piece. Cause we're just, most of the time we're doing the best we can. And I think that's so important to remember. Thank you so much for speaking to that. We are down to our rapid fire.
Okay, so here we go.
Here we go. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
So we are, and this is another one of the things that has committed us together as a couple. We love being outdoors. And so hiking is our family. That's what we do together as a family. And prior to COVID, we in fact would plan family hikes annually and train for those and do them together. So hiking is something we do outdoors. And in my body part of my mind, body, spirit, nourish, I try to do those 20 minutes in outdoor space.
That's a great idea. I love that. I think that's so important. Even like I noticed during COVID, I worked remotely for 15 months, I think. I mean, we just went back last June, and we've got a great outdoor space. And I started taking just even my yoga mat outside just to get just some fresh air. I think that makes all the difference in the world. If you can break up your day with that and just kind of ground yourself, yeah, that's so important. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Peaceful. Peaceful is something that I strive for daily. Am I at peace? Have we done everything we could do? Another one is courageous. Having courage to do hard things, and being prepared that not everyone may always agree, but being courageous and stepping out and saying this is what we need to be doing. I need to be doing personally, or what we need to be doing as an institution to serve what we need to do. Another one is curious. Curious will always be on my list. I can never stop learning and understanding, what's happening in the world, how it impacts our institution, what's happening in our individual communities. We have 6 very distinct campuses.
Yes.
And so, what may be a challenge up in Amarillo may be something completely different that we're dealing with in the Permian Basin. And so remaining curious and always checking in on things. The last one is being vulnerable and being willing to say to my team, this is not my strength. I need to hear some diverse perspectives. Being willing to say, I don't know the best answer to this question. Who do we need to bring in to help us get to the best answer for this question? And, the biggest mistake, there are 2 things that a leader, I think, can make a mistake about. Number one, becoming insulated. And individuals, you surround yourself with individuals who agree with you, who think like you, and who are afraid to oppose something in a respectful way that you may be. So I think that's a dangerous thing. And then last, as a leader, losing your commitment to the mission or the vision of the university and staying focused. And so those are things that I'm trying to be very intentional about not letting happen as a leader.
Yeah. And I think those last 2 can be really easy to fall into. I think sometimes people fall into them without even realizing it. Because
Absolutely.
I think I think you see it happen all the time in so many different environments. So I think it's so important to speak to that and stay true to that. Do you have some things that you do to kind of check yourself on those things every so often? You talked about your family always keeps you in check. Do you have any other practices that kind of help you with that? Because that's tricky.
Yes. So what I did was I identified some accountability partners for me professionally.
Sure.
Who I said, I need to make sure that you understand that you have permission at any point to come to me and say, I think we may be headed in the wrong direction, or I have concerns about this. And knowing that I was completely open to that conversation. And us having the agreement that I know that if you're coming to me, it's because I have given you permission to be an accountability partner and say to me. That is something that's a leadership recommendation from some other individuals that I have worked with who have said, Lori, always make sure you have an accountability partner. One of the funny stories I tell is, I never want to stay beyond in this leadership position beyond where I feel like I can have impact.
Right.
And we see that happen sometimes. Yeah. And, I've given this individual the freedom to come to me and say, you know what, Lori, it's time to plan a great party. And I know what that means.
Right. Those are the code words. Okay.
Right. Those are the code words. You have served your purpose. You have served your mission. Thank you for what you've done for the university. Now it's time for us to have a great party. And I'll know what that means because I see people who are unable to do that for themselves. Yeah. And I don't want to ever do that to this university.
I think that's so important too, because I think the people that sometimes fall into that, it becomes their identity and they lose sight of who they are as just a human outside of that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's such great wisdom to surround yourself with those people. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And I know that you have a lot of demands on your time. So the fact that you were able to take this time with me, so appreciate it very much. Audience, you can, again, follow us on embracinglayers.com, at Embracing Layers on Instagram. We will have sources on our website where Dr. Lori Rice-Spearman will share things that help her, whether it's books, podcasts, people she follows. So check that out there. Check out the show notes for all of her background and how she became into this person that she is today. Thank you so much for joining us this week and have a great week.